Afternoon.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Public Education for the City of Savannah and County of Chatham. This meeting is live streamed. So I will ask our board secretary if this meeting, if the notice has gone out for this meeting. And she assures me that it has. I will ask you now to stand for the national anthem.
Mr. Board President, Madam Superintendent, board officers, members of the Board of Public Education, it is my honor to introduce to you today our students who are coming forth with our opening exercises. Ms. Achenbaugh was not able to be here today, so I have the great honor of doing this today for your board meeting here on February 7th. We have Brejon Jackson and Billy Johnson who are here to join us. They are from Jenkins High School Chorus, and they're under the direction of LaShawn Leggett. Both Brejon and Billy are seniors with aspirations to attend college after graduation. Brejon plans to study sociology, while Billy plans to major in the performing arts while running track. Both students would like to pursue careers in entertainment after college. Ladies and gentlemen, your opening exercises.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Awesome. I know.
Usher Raymond better watch out.
Exactly. That was amazing. It's giving me boys and me feels all over.
Okay. So I don't know about you guys, but I heard a little bit of Donny Hathaway going on there. Okay. Let's hear it again for Jenkins High School. I will now accept the motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you.
I now motion to approve an amended agenda to amend the approved agenda to add items 7.29 annual consolidated finance audit as of June 30th, 2023. Malden and Jenkins, and revision to item 7.16, bid 24-17, uniform rental and purchase, annual contract, amount correction. Item 7.17, bid 2426, network switches and wireless devices for new Bloomingdale Elementary School, E-rate eligible. Additional legal language. And item 9.05, budget transfer, transportation overtime account lines, name correction.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Announcements. February 9th, that is this Friday, Georgia Historical Society's new Georgia Day Expo at the Civic Center from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 13th, the Star Student and Star Teacher 2024 Awards Banquet at 20 East Broad Street. I think that's the Pirates House, from 12:30 to 2:30. Thursday, February 15th, the Capital Improvement Committee meeting here at Woodville Tompkins, in this room, actually, at 9. Sorry.
Whitney. We're back at Whitney.
Oh, God. This is Whitney. I said in this room. No, I said in this room. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let's try this again. Capital Improvement Committee, or those in the know, CIC. Oh, that's because it's listed here on Woodville. Okay, all right. Here at Whitney at 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 21st, once again, Finance Advisory Committee here at Whitney at 9 a.m. And finally, the Audit Committee meeting is February 22nd here at Whitney at 9 a.m. Are you sure? I thought that was at 8.
Yeah, all they did.
Okay, 9. Sure. I'm pretty sure it's at 8.
We did not vote to change it, but
It says 8.
It's normally at 8, right?
I'll find out right now.
We'll find out.
it is normally at 8.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's 8 o'clock. Sorry about that. Thank you. All right, in remembrance, Anna Akins, a teacher from Savannah High School, date of passing December 21st, 2023. Kelly Owens, a bus monitor, date of passing January 13th, 2024. Kiana Freeman, date of passing January 13th, 2024. Third grade student at Butler Elementary School. Ashley Harrison, school nurse at May Howard Elementary School, date of passing January 18th, 2024. Jerry Wickman, executive director certified in academic affairs, date of passing January 19th, 2024. And Sergeant, now, Sergeant, no, she was promoted to Sergeant. Sergeant Brianna Moffitt, 2019 graduate of Windsor Forest High School, date of passing January 28th, 2024. If we all would stand for a moment of silence. And now we will have our superintendent's report.
Thank you. I always love the opportunity to report on our Student of the Month and our good news for this month. Our Student of the Month for January is a 10th grade student at Savannah Arts Academy. This outstanding student is a member of the Theater Club, the International Club, and a nominee for the Governor's Honors Program. In addition, she volunteers with animal adoption programs and shelters for animals that are in need. Our honoree recently expressed her desire to pursue studying foreign languages in the future. Our nominee, the person who nominated this student, Mr. Bunch, had this to say about our student. I think this student should be selected for the Student of the Month because she is a humble student. She does not seek accolades for her brilliance, but she is so impressive and very much deserves to be recognized for her hard work and her dedication to academia. I imagine being selected for Student of the Month would come as a huge surprise to her because she is so soft-spoken. But I want her to know that we see her value. I want her to also know that the whole district sees her value, and students like her who work hard for the simple love of learning and self-betterment. When asked about her future, our Student of the Month told us this: I want to continue studying foreign languages after high school. I love learning about the history and cultural implications of vocabulary and how languages have evolved. Language is connected to every single academic subject, even math. Please help me to congratulate and recognize the Superintendent Student of the Month for January 2024, Miss Olivia Shockey.
Congratulations. Keep up the great work.
Olivia is taking home multiple gifts from our community partners, to include gift cards from Members First Credit Union, Georgia United Credit Union, Plant Riverside District Gelato, Savannah Music Festival, and the 5 Spot Restaurant. Plus, she will be receiving merchandise from Advertising Specialties, Savannah State University, Georgia Southern University, Gulfstream, and Bahama Joe's. Olivia and the students in her English Language Arts class will receive printed copies of her favorite book, We'll Always Write Back How One Letter Changed 2 Lives, by Caitlin Alafrecka, I think is how you say the last name. Of that author. Our sponsor for this book is E. Shaver Booksellers. Lastly, she will also take home a portrait by Upscale Photography provided by Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools. Again, congratulations to Olivia and her family. I'd love for her family to please stand, and the nominating teacher. Congratulations, and thank you for gifting us with such a special young lady. We would also like to thank our nominator, again, Mr. Cameron Bunch. I will now move on to the good news report. Many causes for applause. First and foremost, on Friday, we were delighted to be able to be in the company of our 2025 Teachers of the Year, representing 57 schools, charters, and programs within our district. Thank you to our sponsors who helped make this event such a pleasure: Georgia Ports Authority, Gulfstream, Parkers, Evans General Construction, Members First Credit Union, Georgia United Credit Union, ESS, and Georgia Southern University, as well as J.E. Dunn Construction. We appreciate your donations and support of this very important event in our school year. I would like to go on to recognize Myers Middle School Principal, Dr. Marcus Scott, who has been named a finalist for the 2024 Georgia Association of Secondary School Principal of the Year Award. True to his humility, Dr. Scott is quick to emphasize that his achievement is not an individual accolade, as much as a collective process for Myers Middle School, which he attributes to the hard work of the school staff and dedicated faculty members who consistently put students first. Dr. Scott has been in education for 22 years, 18 as an administrator. Congratulations to Dr. Scott. I also had the distinct honor recently of modeling a one-of-a-kind dress made specially for me by apparel designer and instructor Thagara Rucker at the Savannah Arts Academy Fashion Show last week. What a great opportunity to highlight the great work of our staff. The dress was beautiful in every way, and it was an honor for me to participate with students on that particular event. The signature event for the Arts Academy is one of the most anticipated events of the year, and it is a unique blend of creativity and innovation that showcases the artistic expressions that blossoms at Savannah Arts Academy. Hats off to all of the student creators and to the theater and fashion director, David Poole. We also recently had a fantastic night at the Savannah Ghost Pirates game against the Orlando Solar Bears. Thank you to the students from Sol J.C. Johnson and Windsor Forest High Schools for performing that night, and thanks to everyone who came out to support the team. A portion of all of the sales proceeds that night will come to Educate Chatham Foundation to support our ongoing student success. Let's give a big round of applause to our district spelling bee winner, Deverall Goldson. Is he here today with us? He is not here. However, we want to recognize him. He is an 8th grader from the STEM Academy at Bartlett Middle School. If his name sounds familiar, it is because he was just here a few months ago as the Superintendent Student of the Month. Wow. What a coincidence. Lucas Norman, a 5th grader at May Howard Elementary, and Helena Wynn, a 6th grader at New Hampstead K-8, were our 2nd and 3rd place winners. Deverell will go on to represent the district in the Regional B on February 24th. The 15th Annual Student Success Expo and STEM Festival were just that, a success. They were held last Saturday, January 27th, and thousands of parents and students came out to the Savannah Civic Center for college and career readiness information, as well as displays from our schools and community partners. This signature event shows off diverse programs offered by our schools, allows parents to meet and greet principals and teachers, and learn about all of the awesome programs and offerings we have in our district. It also officially kicks off the application window for choice programs, pre-K programs, and of course our little Acorn Academies. Thanks to every staff member who contributed to make this event happen, and to everyone who came out and supported our students and staff. I would also like to extend a big expression of gratitude to the United Way of Coastal Empire and hundreds of classroom visitors who supported Read United Day on February 2nd. One indicator of reading readiness is the presence of books in a child's home. The volunteers on February 2nd not only read to our pre-K students through 2nd grade scholars, but they also gave each student a book of their very own to take home that day. One more example of Together We Can, and that attitude to support our scholars. On January 9th, the Georgia Department of Education released the 2023-24 schools identified for additional support as required by federal law, along with the list of schools that made improvements needed to exit that status. We are proud to announce that 5 of our schools have officially exited the Georgia Department of Education CSI and TSI list. These students, teachers, principals, and support staff and families are to be congratulated for working tirelessly and for the support they provide every single day to each of our scholars. Please join us in congratulating them for all of their hard work. The school principals are here today, and we'd like to call them forward to shake hands with the board. Dr. Tony Foy, who is not with us today. So Dr. Ball Oliver will be accepting on his behalf. He is the principal at A.B. Williams Elementary School. Principal Tammy Broadnax at Duran Middle School. Principal Jeannie Thompson at Largo Tibet Elementary School.
Congratulations.
At Brock Elementary School, we have former Principal Selena Ruth Gillians. The current principal, Dr. Desma Patterson. And finally, we have Principal Janai Gilbert Collins at Windsor Forest Elementary School.
Congratulations, thank you.
Again, lots to celebrate. We continue to be excited about the progress and evidence of success in our school district. I'd like to now hand the professional Senate meeting minutes over to Ms. Oh, no. Did I skip something? Nope. I think I got it, yes. Our professional Senate meeting minutes over to Mr. Moses McNeil and Reagan Dillon, who will be giving us a report on recent activity amongst that important group in our district.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, our professional Senate meeting was held Thursday, January 18th, 2024, at Hubert Middle School. The meeting was called to order at 4:15 p.m. It was called to order by Mrs. Reagan Dillon and Mr. Moses McNeil. Teacher/staff concerns. In some schools, academic coaches are not being used to their full potential. Many teachers feel that less academic coaching positions could create teaching positions where more students would be impacted. It would also save teachers more work that academic coaches are creating. Time clocks need to be looked at. Teachers are professionals. We all know teachers work off the clock. However, many teachers in our system are being docked pay for trivial minutes. RTI and 504 coordination needs dedicated people at schools that are paid positions. If the principal and teacher address issues with the student and parent and have a plan they are following and documenting, someone higher up needs to step in and stop the continual abuse teachers face. Differentiated professional development is needed. E-learning days grouped with required district planning creates more work for teachers. Teachers cannot support students if they are in trainings or traveling to training. The meeting was adjourned at 5:15 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Reagan Dillon, Moses McNeil. And if it's okay, I have a short Black History fact, if that's okay. Okay. As everyone can see, I'm wearing a dashiki. This dashiki was gifted to me by a member of my church, Mrs. Jerry Williams. She's a retired Savannah-Chatham public school system educator and Savannah State University alum. A few years ago, her and her husband took a voyage to Ghana, Africa, and upon coming back to the States, they blessed me with this strong dashiki. They visited present-day Elmina, Ghana, where there's a location named the Door of No Return. It's an actual doorway that slaves went through to board the slave ships. I wear this throughout the year, not just Black History Month, to remind me of the sacrifice that my ancestors endured so that I may be here today.
Mr. President, may I I know we don't normally have comments reflecting on the on the professional
I
Senate.
was about to ask anyone else who wanted to make
Well,
comments,
and thank you for sharing that it's wonderful to hear your experience and how that's reflected in Black history, and so thank you for sharing that. But I do want to reflect on the Professional Senate report. When I read this, when I was reading the agenda, I was like, wow. To me, this is the power of the Professional Senate. Some of the things that were reflected in that very brief, but to me, powerful summary are things that I've heard anecdotally expressed, and I think that's a perfect example of where the teacher burnout report and having the voices of our teachers reflected to our administration. I mean, these are all things that we can discuss, we can review, we can talk about how we improve the culture around these specific issues. So I want to thank the teachers for using their voice and for bringing that to our attention as a board, and I look forward to seeing how some of that feedback will then be reflected in operational changes and policy changes if needed. So thank you.
Ms. Dillon?
Can I just stress that together we can and together we will? It's no one's fault. We're just looking for solutions, and I cannot thank enough you people for listening to us and valuing us and giving us a voice.
Yes, and I'll just add that in next month's board meeting, you will get an update on teacher burnout. All of the things that were lifted up in the minutes have been addressed in cabinet with actionable solutions that can be implemented as early as this year to begin to rectify some of the things that are here. So we are already in solution-oriented phase, and you'll be seeing some of those things forthcoming in the next 30 days.
Thank you very much. Okay, Board of Education matters. Mr. Hediger.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. As we move forward in the agenda, we have Board of Education matters. A couple of policy reviews for you. Item 6.01. This is Board Policy BA, Goals and Objectives. You'll note that this is a mid-year policy review, and the reason that this is important to come before the board at this time, of course, this is a first and second read process due to the updates that are being proposed. You'll note that this is really the governance side of the board's role as it relates to strategic priorities and strategic planning. We had a very robust and excellent conversation this morning in the Board Accountability Committee, which was embedded in the informal session of the board. And this really is a relative connection to that. So this really memorializes the board's role in that strategic planning. It specifically calls that the district will have a strategic plan, and subsequently we have updated the strategic priorities and objectives to align with recommendations for changes that the board will also be adopting in next month's agenda. So this is a first reader, first review. We'll come back next month for a final adoption.
Next.
Hearing no comments, moving on to the next item on your agenda. This is item 6.02. This is policy GCRA, which is drug screening for bus drivers. This has been part of our policy code manual for quite some time, and it was up for a 4-year review. You'll note that there are no changes recommended for the policy or regulation here on this particular agenda item, and subject to the board's final review, we would like to consider this completed per the board policy review process.
Is this the second reading?
This is a 4-year review. There are no recommended changes, so subject to any final comments of the Board of Education, we would like to consider this complete under the policy BA review.
Okay.
Thank you. I just have a question about the policy, the random screening. It says that there'll be true random tests. So what is the randomization procedure?
Yes, there's we have a computer program that kind of pulls in names and does it randomly. And yes, even when you do that, yes, names come more frequently than others, but it is a random process that occurs.
Oh, no, I wasn't implying that. I just wanted to know,
Okay.
were you using a random number generator?
It is a
your
random
answer
number
is
generator.
Yes, we are
And
using
answer
a
yes,
random
number
number
yes.
generator. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Smith. Did you have a question? Oh, were you gonna?
Just ready for the proclamation.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so we're adopting this?
No, sir. Without any recommended
Right,
changes
no.
to this,
Okay.
we'll move forward and consider it completely reviewed.
Perfect, thank you.
Turning the agenda back over to the board president for item 6.03, Proclamation National School Counseling Week.
Mr. Smith, you're on.
As proclaimed by the Board of Education on February 7th, 2024, whereas school counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further their educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas the school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive development school counseling programs and considered are integral parts of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, we now proclaim February 5th through the 9th of 2024 as National School Counseling Week. In witness thereof, we officially affix the seal of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education on this proclamation, the 7th day of February 2024. This is signed by the board president, Mr. Roger Moss, and school superintendent, Dr. Denise Watts.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept? Second? It's been moved and seconded that we accept this proclamation. All in favor? Thank you. Passes. So, I'm sorry?
Is there
I'm
council-
about to do that. Okay, so. Hey, all right. So we actually have some counselors here today. We have Chiquita Polite from Groves High School, Taylor Hickenbotham from Islands High School, James Flanagan from Coastal Middle School, Charlotte Joyner from Rice Creek K-8, Toy Williams Hagre from Pulaski Elementary School, Tanya Adams from A.B. Williams Elementary School, and Anton Harvey Henderson from Harvey Henderson, Formie Early Learning Center. I'm sorry.
I'd like to also recognize that we have the district's lead counselor, Kimberly McGuire, with us as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you as well. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will now accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Been moved by Ms. Hall, seconded by Ms. Grabowski. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. All opposed? That is 8-1. One opposed, Mr. Johnson? All right, thank you. Mr. Jackson. No. Okay, CCRPI. Okay. Dr. May, how are you?
Good afternoon. How are you? Thank you very much. I'm here to present on school year 2023 College and Career Ready Performance Index for the district. One thing to note is that the CCRPI is the basis of state accountability. So it is how we are assessed at the state level by the Georgia Department of Education with regard to our district-wide performance. There are 5 components within the CCRPI. One thing that I do want to draw your attention to is that per the approved amendment, and the approval was garnered by the U.S. Department of Education, the overall CCRPI score is now formally eliminated. So we will no longer report on an overall CCRPI score. We will simply report on the 5 components. Each of those components and its indicators are reported on a 0 to 100 scale. Those 5 components are depicted on the slide. First, we have content mastery, which assesses achievement in English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. Progress is an index of growth across English language arts, mathematics, and also the progress toward English language proficiency for our English learners. Closing gaps is the assessment of the degree to which we are meeting our achievement improvement targets. And one thing that we will note there is that formula has been updated. So when we get to that slide, we will discuss that update. Readiness presents for elementary and middle school grade levels at or above grade level reading, student attendance beyond the core. Readiness at the high school level is assessed with at or above grade level reading, student attendance, accelerated enrollment, pathway completion, and college and career readiness. For high school only, graduation rate is the 5th component, and here for the CCRPI, we calculate both a 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate and a 5-year adjusted cohort graduation rate. Together, those form the single score that we will see. So here what we see is the table that presents the performance for the district in comparison with the state, and also a comparison group of demographically similar districts within the state of Georgia. On this slide, to the right, you will notice our district graduation rate performance for school year 2023. The district outperformed both the state and the comparison group, earning a score of 89. And remember, this is the tabulation that includes both the 4-year cohort graduation rate, which counts for 2/3 of that component score, as well as the 5-year cohort graduation rate, which counts for the additional 1/3 of that overall score. Any questions on this as we progress to the 4 additional indicators? All right. Content mastery answers the question of whether students are achieving mastery of grade level content standards necessary to be prepared for the next grade, college, or career. What we see with regard to content mastery are the scores of the district compared to the comparison group and state for the elementary grade band, grades K through 5, with this really what we're assessing are grades 3, 4, 5, grades 6 through 8, the middle grades, and grades 9 through 12, the high school. For The district performance, we see the district outperformed the comparison group in both the elementary and high school grade bands. However, the district did fall below the state across all 3 grade bands and also fell slightly below the comparison group for the middle grades. Yes.
Thank you. On this particular slide, like you said, we outpaced our comp group. Our comp group is Atlanta, Bibb, Clayton, Henry, Muskogee, and Richmond counties.
Yes.
But the state overall is still making a D in this area.
Correct.
And our comp group much lower than that, and us slightly above our comp group.
Right.
So California just lost a lawsuit about learning loss during COVID. And I was listening to see what was the basis of that. And it was, for lack of a better summary, not just reduced or virtual education services, but for some young people, no virtual services because of the lack of technology. We had one-to-one technology.
Yes.
We had set that up. We were well on our way to that prior to the pandemic.
Correct.
This might not be a question for data and accountability. This might be a question for academic affairs. What is the difference between what we provided and what California provided or failed to provide? We're not doing great here. We know we made provisions. What's the difference between what they didn't provide and what we are providing? That's helping us move forward, but still be a bit behind.
One of the things that I can answer part of that, because a lot of it, when COVID hit, we had to transition to online. So technology really played a factor in ensuring that the instructional process continued. You know, when we talk about having a learning management system online, that was a key asset that the district had that can leverage. We talked about one-on-one. It wasn't easy when you had every district in the nation trying to purchase devices and all the channels were being emptied out. So we had connections with the state, we had connections with other districts, and trying to find avenues to pull devices to complete our one-to-one initiatives. In addition to that, we did the Wi-Fi on wheels because we had to address those populations that did not have connectivity. And that was very successful for us. We also transitioned to MiFi with a partnership with T-Mobile that we pursued, and we provided thousands of MiFi devices to students that didn't have connectivity. In addition to that, Academic Affairs also rolled out online digital resources for families to use, students to use, and even had packets for those that were anti-technology, that those packets were available at the school sites. We put them at the front door where parents could go to pick them up during that time where we didn't fully understand the impact COVID was having.
So that's the Edgenuity, the Brightspace, the MyCEIV, those platforms that allow asynchronous technical teaching. So basically, we continued providing service, whereas in California, they just, at some points, didn't have service.
We accounted for, even if you did not have technology, we created.
You had a paper packet. Okay.
Right. And
Ms.
we also
Ms.
did
Ball Oliver said, and if you didn't have access to that technology, then a paper packet was provided and delivered to you.
The other part, we also did creative scheduling. When we started opening school, we did have Wednesday's shutdown, if you recall, where that was deep cleaning day. Staff were still on hand where they could do lesson planning and do other activities, but we tried to bring students in as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for this report. And thank you, Dr. Hoskins-Brown, for that question. That's interesting. I know that Mr. Johnson had requested the other day information from our neighboring
Yes, sir.
districts. Do you have those?
We do. We provided a series of appendices.
Yes.
So we have slides that specifically
And you're about to
address
get to
those.
that. I'm so sorry.
No, absolutely.
I used to do that on
Would you
tests
like
too.
for
I
me
always
to-
opened before they said you could open, so, okay.
We are very flexible and accommodating. Would you
Oh,
like me to move?
go ahead. Yes,
to
I'm so
presenting
sorry.
those?
Yes, thank you.
No, absolutely, sure. So when we look at our neighboring 3 surrounding districts, we're looking at Bryan County Schools, Effingham County Schools, and Liberty County School System. We are presenting the 2023 score comparisons by grade band, so you can see how we did at the elementary level, the middle, and also the high school. So this first slide, Appendix B, shows you performance comparisons at the elementary grade levels. Some things to note, of course, are the discrepancies with regard to the size of the districts and also the demographic composition of the districts, which are obviously what set them aside from us in terms of a non-comparison. They're surrounding, but they are not directly comparable. So with regard to content mastery, progress, closing gaps, and readiness, those are your 4 indicators at the elementary grade level. You will see some variances with regard to the way the district performs in comparison to the other 3. Closing gaps is particularly notable. You can see that Savannah-Chatham County Public School System achieved a score of 100, far outpacing the improvement of the other 2 districts for school year, other 3 districts, excuse me, for school year 2023.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Catchmark.
Well, since we're looking at all 4, and I know you weren't through your presentation,
Yes,
just so I understand CCRPI,
yes.
because I've only been hearing about it for 10 years, and they change the rules every year, so I still don't understand it.
We're on a 3-year cycle of change, I guess,
know.
but now we're yearly.
Is this accurate? Progress and closing gaps are leading indicators, content mastery and readiness are lagging indicators? Because the reason I'm asking is I'm looking at our comparisons these are fine, but also in here, and we're outpacing the state and comp group in progress and closing gaps, but we're trailing in content mastery and readiness. So I'm either really concerned or I'm optimistic, and I'm not sure which one I should be.
They're
Optimistic, okay.
Optimistic is definitely where I like that glass half full perspective, and I definitely encourage us to stay on that side. But they're all, in fact, lagging indicators because they're all based on performance obtained in 2023, but we're reporting it.
So what I really
School year
need, though,
23.
is, so then I need to see content mastery and readiness scores for 3 years, because those should have all gone up if our progress and closing gaps were higher,
And
correct?
keep in mind, yes, but keep in mind, due to pandemic-related disruptions, we will not be able to present. Of
I
course,
hear
at
ya.
3, we would have
So we're spending time
22.
talking about flawed data that doesn't matter, to a certain
We are
extent.
talking about data that's unavailable. I'm sorry for 2 of those last 3 years, yes, sir.
And I'm not picking on you. I'm just
Yes.
frustrated that even the
understand.
state says, we don't care about this stuff anymore, we're changing the rules, but we're still holding you accountable for it. And
The
I'm being
rules have-
flippant. I know, you don't need to
Yes.
answer that. Thank you.
I understand and appreciate it. Would you like to see the comparison scores for the middle grade band and the high school, or would this
Yes.
look at elementary?
Yes.
So here is a look at the middle grade band. So you can see the district performance. Once again, we outperformed in closing gaps, but there are variances with regard to content mastery, progress, and readiness.
Okay.
And then lastly, we have high school. And you can see the performance variances. Once again, closing gaps is really where the district shines.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Hall.
Laura,
Yeah.
I know that this isn't something that we can easily put on a graph or a chart, But is there any talk about the fact that so many of our parents were unprepared to become at-home teachers across the state, not just Chatham County, and what effect that had? Say the difference between kids whose parents were, if you
Yes, ma'am.
were a child of a teacher versus someone who just had no idea how to supervise that activity over that long a period of time. Is there any discussion about that at all?
To be perfectly frank, the answer to that is yes, that has been acknowledged. The fact that there were huge variances from household to household, from district to district, from school to school statewide. However, while that's acknowledged, the response tends to be a shrug of the shoulder, and everybody was in that same boat, not just within the state of Georgia, but nationally, and we did the best we could.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Howard Hall.
From looking at the content mastery in middle schools, I just like to make a comment about middle schools.
Yes, ma'am.
The middle school grade span is the most fragile grade span there is. It's because they
Yes.
are transitioning from a nurturing elementary environment to an increased independent environment,
Yes, ma'am.
to include academic challenges in lieu of the teachers trying to prepare them for high school. And we can't negate the fact that they have a significant development in physically,
Yes.
emotionally, and
Yes.
cognitively.
Yes.
So just like the middle child in a family, you give the attention to the youngest child, you give the attention to the oldest, but that middle child just fits right there in the middle, just like middle school. So I'm interested in hearing what are we doing to supplement middle school? Because as Ms. Hall typically talks about equity, we can't have it across the board when it comes to these grade spans because there is a drastic change when they become middle schoolers.
Absolutely agree, and Mrs. Ball Oliver will address that once we get to that section, or she can address that now.
Good afternoon. I completely concur and understand, having been a middle school principal before, that was the greatest challenge of my lifetime, due to all of those factors. And so in looking at the data and recognizing this has been a systemic problem for years, we're now looking at our teams concentrating their focus and providing them with more assistance and boots on the ground. So actually spending time with those teachers in those collaborative plannings to help develop those lessons, but then modeling how do you then deliver that lesson to a challenging group of students who have so many other things vying for their attention and liable to capture their attention while you're trying to teach just by virtue of the age and the maturation process they're going through. And so helping them to understand strategies around engagement and how to make those experiences in the classroom relevant for them, more aligned to real world experiences and engagement. Because we find that's where a lot of our attention needs to be focused, is helping our teachers in middle school understand how to help create those more engaging lessons for them. And I think Ms. Dillon, I'm going to shout her out, can speak to that in terms of how you plan the lessons. So that's a lot of work that needs to be focused on that, recognizing that still more attention must be given to our middle schoolers because that is where we need to put our focus.
Mr. Johnson and then Mr. Katchmar.
To quote a former board member, let's make middle school great again. Because one thing that Ms. Wade, when she was on the board, used to always say is, we worry about the little bitties. We worry about getting people ready for graduation. We forget about those middle years. So I would really would like to see a concerted effort with those middle grades. I know one thing that is a shining light with those middle grades is the closing the gap numbers. We are significantly outpacing the state. We are significantly outpacing our comp group. But it's always been a challenge. Middle school has been a challenge since before I was on the board. And and it's not just our district. It's across the state and across the nation. So if we could find some sort of, I'm not going to say golden nugget, but something that will work for our kids With our diverse population, I think will be not just good for us, but we can be a beacon for the rest of the state.
Just to jump on that bandwagon, and as a point of emphasis, I'm glad I heard you say this is a systemic challenge for us. It's been a systemic challenge for years, and when we seem to be making significant progress in elementary and high school, we still lag in middle school, and we still lag, even though they're a challenge for everybody, the state and our comp group. So I'm glad we're identifying what works and adding, but I'm going to suggest we need to do something different, because what we've been doing to now is not enough. Let's find what works, add to it, but then what are we not doing that the state is doing or others are doing? We need to do something a little different. So I'm just going to emphasize we need to continue to focus on middle school.
Ms. Grabowski?
So it was before my time on the board when I think the transition was made for several of our schools to go to a K-8 model, I think to try and address some of the middle school challenges. Have we evaluated the effectiveness of the transition to a K-8 model?
So we have not done an actual formal program evaluation. Have we looked at the data? We do see differences in the data in middle grades, which again, we spoke to. That's a part of being a middle schooler where you're starting to find yourself. So we do see some differences in the data in those K-8s, but again, it is very different from what we see in our middle schools. But have we done a complete program evaluation in terms of our K-8s? No, we have not.
I guess, and I'm just curious, because now that they're in place, you sometimes hear from parents that are hesitant to leave their elementary babies at a K-8 because they're concerned about what their transition is going to be to high school, because are they truly getting, and I know that I'd had some conversations with Ms. Newman when she was at Hess about that, but it's just, and looking in the mirror and learning from the changes we made, I just wonder if that would be a useful analysis.
So yes, that will be a useful analysis, because while it may not be a perfect solution, I'm sure there are things that we can borrow that have helped improve that data. So yes.
So stay there. And I don't know if we've experimented with it here or not. I've heard of some school districts isolating sixth graders because, I'm going to go to when I was growing up. When I was growing up, we had junior high school. There's a big difference between a sixth grader and a seventh grader. Mm-hmm. Have we considered working with just isolating sixth graders to get them prepared for basically middle school is now junior high, so getting them prepared for that. So
yes, actually we've had schools that have done that in various ways, and if you look at the way that our middle schools are currently designed, our sixth graders and our seventh graders and eighth graders are housed on a team together, and many times they don't actually interact with each other unless it's at lunchtime or doing arrival and dismissal. Many of our sixth graders act much like the old ninth grade academy model that you may have seen.
Right.
But our middle schools are housed more that way as opposed to the junior high school model, which keeps them kind of in their own little learning pod with their grade level alike peers. I think that we saw some improvement with some of those strategies, and then there have been some others that schools have tried as well. I think part of it is, though, to Dr. Howard Hall's point, that maybe the way that we indoctrinate them to middle school and that whole secondary school experience, we could look at that as well, because they may not be ready sometimes for the level of freedoms that they receive, and we just kind of might need to think about what that transition looks like a bit more for our middle schoolers. I think that's one place that we could actually take a look at and get some improvements as well.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you. Mr. Cashmore, I think you'll enjoy the discussion on the next one, progress. And the reason why I say that is progress assesses how much growth students are demonstrating, and this is in comparison to, it's relative to, so in comparison to academically similar students. So for this year, and it will also be the case, so for the year that we're reporting, 2023, as well as this academic year, 2024, ELA scores are unable to be calculated for the high school grade band due to the fact that we're talking about ELA being assessed in American literature. So to look at those academically similar students, we would have to go back to 8th grade. For school year 2023, that would mean going back to 2020. And for next year, or this current academic year, but when I report next time, it'll be, of course, for 8th grade would be 21. So 2020, 2021, we don't have any data due to pandemic-related disruptions. So please understand that the formula that you see noted, ELA counts for 45%, mathematics counts for 45% of the total score, and progress towards English language proficiency counts 10%, and that full formula applies to the elementary and middle grade bands. However, for the high school grade band, because ELA is unavailable, that means that that score is based 90% on mathematics and 10% on progress toward English language proficiency. So when we're looking at this data, I really do need for everybody to keep that in mind. So despite that, you can see that I'm very proud to report that for the high school grade band, we outperform both the state and the comparison districts. That was also the case for our elementary grade band. And of course, where we see that lagging behind is in those middle grades, just as discussed. So any questions on this one? Yes.
Dr. Ringman.
You have on your second bullet point on the bottom there that I'm guessing the state says that we're supposed to incorporate individuals with significant cognitive
Yes.
disabilities. Is that throughout all other areas, or is that just in progress?
So that was the case with regard to progress. So wherever there's a footnote, and also there's an appendix slide that deals with that, where it's noted per the approved amendment earlier this year, students who participate in GAA 2.0 have been incorporated as appropriate. So for progress, you'll see those scores reflected in ELA and mathematics using that categorical gains model. So it's always in favor of growth.
Thank you.
For closing gaps, I apologize, Dr.
no,
Hoskins-Brown.
That's all right. My comment is connecting closing gaps to progress.
Okay.
So the trends in progress are just like the trends in closing gaps.
Yes, ma'am.
And the value differences, so really the significant trends in progress are just driven by the closing gaps data, because even those numbers, if you compare them, they're about the same. They're not the exact same number, but the difference in the values.
They will have
It's roughly the
similarities
same.
because they're both based on growth or improvement in performance, so absolutely from that vein. But one thing I do want to point with regard to closing gaps is you will see that the district is far outpacing at all 3 grade bands, which
Okay.
is quite a notable difference, very positive difference in the fact that not only are we making gains, but our gains are especially noteworthy when you take into account that realistically, school year 2023 was our full, almost full, if you will, return back to normalcy, even though there were still some pandemic-related disruptions still ongoing at the very beginning of the year and perhaps throughout with some changes. So these are really significant in that they're a testament to the work of our teachers, our families, and our students in really trying to do their best and really learning and outpacing the growth that we see with our comparison group and also the state.
So I I agree, and I'm glad to see it. That's what we invested a lot of resources and a lot of time is to figure out ways to close the gaps, because there was a time when the gaps were present, they were distinct and persistent. So this makes sense that we would be really good at this now because we've been doing it, but also the percentage of kids, or I guess the magnitude of the gaps that the districts see. If we go back to Appendix B with like Bryan County, they don't see the gaps that we see, do they? I don't get, okay, I'm seeing people mouth the word no. So I don't expect that they would be as good at closing the gaps as we, because we got way more practice with way more young people and way more strategies. So the comparison with them, with Bryan, and I would say the same for Effingham and Liberty, they don't have the numbers or the challenges that we have. So I'm glad they're an appendix. I appreciate that folks want to see that.
Yes.
But the heavy lifting is in this gap closing in a metropolitan district like ours.
Absolutely. But one thing that I do want to point out, and to be perfectly fair, closing gaps really does even the playing field for everyone, in that the expectation here is a continuous improvement, continuous growth model. So even for those districts that tend to rest at times on their laurels, they still should continue to improve. They still should be aiming to get better, because once you attain a certain threshold, so you are performing quite well, the expectation is, and the way the formula is computed, that you maintain at least that but continue to grow. You shouldn't become complacent. We're always striving for all of our young people to grow more, to become more well-rounded, to have better experiences, to really have more fruitful experiences. So one thing too that I do want to draw your attention to with regard to a notable change, but this was a change that impacted everybody equally across the state, is that the improvement target formula was modified. So the state took a hard look at the previous formula. The previous formula had 100 as the set point, and you subtracted your baseline score from the previous year. So baseline here is 2022. Obviously, that set our new baseline for the CCRPI calculation, and you multiply that by 0.03. Now it has been reset to an acceptable standard maintenance level, and that is 90. 90 is an appropriate maintenance level. 100 was setting that bar unrealistically high. So it reestablished what a reasonable improvement target should be. Any other questions on this?
Just so I understand it, this is a comparison to growth from your baseline, not a
Correct.
state mean.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So
Ours, yes.
if we're at 30 and County X is at 96, it's much easier to have a higher growth rate from 30 than it is from 96 to.
Right.
So
Right.
in theory, I'd rather have small growth, but mastery in everything.
Sure.
As opposed to struggling in everything and really high growth. I mean,
And-
I guess having no growth and struggling is really bad.
Correct.
Right, okay.
But even for those districts that are performing at a high level, if they're remaining stagnant or if they're going backwards,
That's a
that will
problem.
absolutely
Right.
count against them.
Yeah.
Mhm. Any other questions on this? So the last indicator is readiness. With readiness, we are assessing the degree to which students are participating in activities that prepare them for and also demonstrate readiness for the next level, college or career. For the elementary and middle school grade bands, there are 3 indicators: at or above grade level reading, student attendance, and beyond the core. For high school, there are 5 indicators: at or above grade level reading, student attendance, accelerated enrollment, pathway completion, and college and career readiness. One thing that I do want to point out, because this is another change, and it's a big change, is that for the first time, we see an alignment between the CCRPI reading indicator and the Georgia milestones. So please note that at or above grade level reading is now set at the same starting point as is that found on GMAS, and that is the beginning of the Lexile stretch band for each grade level. And that was, of course, the original intent of the creator of the Lexile theoretical framework metametrics. So we are aligned with the full intent of that. Beyond the core at the elementary, middle grade levels incorporates things like fine arts, world languages, career exploratory, and computer science. For the middle grades, it also includes physical education and health. For high school, the first two indicators entail grades 9 through 12. The next three, accelerated enrollment, pathway completion, college and career readiness, really only takes into account the percentage of 12th graders. So for the performance levels of the district, what you will see at both the elementary and middle, as well as the high school, we are at the elementary and high school, we are outperforming our comp group, but still falling below the state. And for those middle grades, of course, that's where we see a slight dip, even in comparison with the comp group. Any questions on readiness?
Dr. Brinkman.
Thank you, Dr. May. I know after last board meeting that you presented, we kind of were talking and you were trying to educate at least me and maybe some other people on the formula that is used on the like entering technical colleges, entering University System of Georgia without needing remediation, and how, and I can't for the life of me find that formula on the GODOE website, but I knew it didn't make sense when you were trying to educate me on it, because like the N that they were using seemed like it shouldn't have been the N, like it was the total number of graduates, even if they weren't going to a technical school. Am I remembering correctly?
So one thing that you have to take into account here, yes, you're remembering that discussion correctly, is that we are talking about those students that we have, first of all, data for. So that is one constraint. They have to have entered either the technical college system or the University System of Georgia, and within that first semester, first year, they are not placed in a remediation course. Of course, part of that conversation too was depending upon how they entered either one and whether they submitted SAT, ACT scores, because those are optional. If they had to take the AccuPlacer, it would have been on that snapshot AccuPlacer performance, and that could have been, I am sitting here with my counselor, I just learned that I have to take this test, I'm taken into another room, and I have to take this test that I'm completely unprepared for, and whatever you attain, that's what you're placed in, whether that is really a fair assessment of performance or not. For additional information, Mrs. Rylander, would you like to speak to the computational?
Yeah, I thought it was like the denominator just seemed like an odd,
It is.
yeah.
Yes, and I think if I'm interpreting your question correctly, the denominator is based on all 12th graders. And it actually is all 12th graders from the prior year for this particular indicator. So regardless of whether they actually went to college or a technical school,
Yes.
they are included in the denominator.
Yes.
That's correct.
And one thing I wanted to point out too, and this is going to be a little stunning, but please take into account that any student who attends a college, university outside of the state of Georgia, or a private college or university in the state of Georgia would in fact count against us in this computation.
Yeah, because they'd be in the denominator, but not the numerator.
Correct.
Okay, so. Okay. Mr. Kachmar.
Last meeting, we talked about concerns about our attendance numbers.
Yes.
And I don't need to know now, but I would love to know later, if our attendance numbers were back to historical norms pre-pandemic, what would that do to our 65.4%? Where would that be?
I can't give you an exact number, but it would definitely,
If somebody could let me know
yes.
later,
could.
I would love to know
Absolutely.
how that change would impact it.
Ms. Hall.
The principals who just came up, and we congratulated them for getting off the list. I wonder, Dr. Watts, is there any kind of mechanism where, because they do the heavy lifting, I'm thinking if they can make those improvements, whatever it is they did, all of our schools need to know what those practices were that got them to where they are. So I just wonder if there's some way between you and Ms. Dillon, if, you know, that information can be shared and they can kind of be highlighted where it would really help other
So,
principals to know.
interestingly enough, as you're making that statement, I was also sending Stacy Taylor an email or text message, and the title was Future Facing. We need to be looking at middle schools that are demonstrating the performance that we would want to see in our schools and kind of doing a success analysis. And I mentioned to her that North Carolina had middle schools to watch, of which I was a principal of one of those schools, and maybe it would be of interest of taking a group to some of these schools to really unpack what the success, what's the magic sauce, and how do we replicate that here in our district. So I love your idea. It aligns to mine, that we do need to be looking at our successes. We spend a lot of time unpacking problems, but we don't often spend enough time unpacking success. And so I'm with you. Text message had already gone out. Okay, so you need to look at, yes.
Who's the principal of the year at a middle school here?
Yes, we need to
What's
learn.
going on at Myers that we can, you know,
And I'd love
look
to
at.
take teachers, principals, and district office staff, because we need to see what it looks like at the classroom level, at the school level. And I don't think it's just like adding things, which is what we tend to do. Sometimes we need to think about what we take away, what the culture is, what the characteristics of the school leader is. There are all kinds of things we really need to unpack. So that success analysis is where my head was going as well.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Let's just keep our fingers crossed that they stay off, because as opposed to the AYP formula, it was 2 years to get on, 2 years to get off. Now you can be on, off, on, off. It can stagger. So let's just hope they
sustain it.
continue on doing it so they can sustain that success.
And we won't even go into subgroups that can put you on with one student. So we're talking continuous improvement strategies. I think we've been sharing those throughout. I did hear specifically about our attendance, and while we can't give you those numbers, we do have a more detailed report that addresses attendance and strategies that we've been looking at. But we did restructure our district attendance plan and academic affairs with student information system, as well as we have principals on that team and some district persons who are looking at the current attendance plans that we have in place, and then borrowing best practices from some of those schools who seem to be making gains in that area. So they're continuing those school-based attendance team meetings with monitoring, support, and interventions, but then we also have that zoom up and let's look at it from a district level, and then we have those principals who are coming back and sharing best practices and things that they are doing that has had an impact or is making an impact on the attendance in their schools and what types of positive incentives they're putting in place. We also have increased our truancy sweeps, because on the other side of that, we need to locate those kids, we need to talk with those parents, and we need to make sure that those students students are in school. So in our partnership with our campus police department and our school social workers, we continue that work as well. And then looking at that, making sure we're focusing on that high quality tier 1 instruction across all of our schools and grades and classes, and that we are supporting our teachers and putting emphasis on that middle grades. And then those schools, as Dr. Howard Hall just said again, knowing that work when you come off the list, making sure we're monitoring those 45-day action plans, because that's a key strategy for all of those schools that you saw today, that they have those 45-day action plans and they're constantly monitoring those and looking at that data and pivoting and making those changes as needed so that they are addressing any concerns real time. And so making sure that we do that across schools and support them with that. We continue to provide our support structures that we've shared with you previously. Some of that's our instructional focus and intervention blocks, the master schedule, and other opportunities for students to engage in learning beyond, before, and after the bell. And so we utilize the formative assessments. We are identifying gaps in their learning, and then we provide that support and remediation, or in some cases, enrichment as needed. And then using our data to make sure that we're having our students in their already customized learning paths during their small group time so that it supports that academic growth. And as you saw, growth is one of those areas that we are doing well, making sure that we're continuing to grow our students. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. In looking at the 45-day action plan in this strategy, and then all of the interventions and support structures that are on the next slide for the improvement strategies, I have I guess a comment or a question. Well, it's a question, but it's kind of rhetorical. If we're doing these things and we have schools that have content mastery scores in the 40s, but we've got graduation rate in the 80s, what are we not seeing, or what do we need to look for? Because that's inconsistent.
Mm-hmm. So when we talked about that, we also talk about what those support structures are. And so when they are taking that, Dr. May shared with you, for example, I'll speak from our high schools. So they're taking that American literature assessment, that one snapshot for that American Lit score is there, but that does not account for the work that's being done to assist them in attaining credit. There are opportunities to do twilight. Mm-hmm. They have actually a schedule that allows for them to obtain 32 units of credit, but only 24 are needed for graduation. And so the reality of that is that if Bernadette is a high school student who fails her 10th grade English, she has an opportunity to take 10th grade English again, pass, get the credit, and that will propel her towards graduation rate. So we do see that those opportunities and that failure is not an option because we built in all of these support structures lends itself to that. So focus has to be put on working with them in the content mastery. We've done a great job of providing supports and helping them attain the credit. But now we have to balance that with the instructional side, specifically where we're capturing that data.
Okay. So someone looking at these data critically would say, well, wait a minute, how are you not mastering but you still finishing?
Yes.
Would it be fair enough to say those two numbers don't represent the same moment in time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have two comments. One, I want to go back to attendance. So, and, you know, I'm all about the truancy sweeps and everything. Are we making sure that we have enough going on during that day that a child wants to come to school? Because a lot of times, and I've seen this happen, a lot of times we say, well, our kids need, they need more math or they need more reading. So because they need more math and they need more reading, we're going to take out art, we're going to take out music, we're going to take out PE, we're going to take out all of these things, and we're going to give them more time on this. So you just suck the life out of school for those kids. So I really want to see how we are making school fun. And how are we making it desirable? That's part one.
Okay.
Part two, on content mastery, how are we assuring that every kid in every high school is getting the information they are going to need to pass that American Lit?
So,
Okay, hang on.
oh, I thought you said
Okay.
you wanted to play.
I'm all about Twilight. I'm all about, coming back after they failed and giving them an. How can we do better at making sure that they pass by giving them all of the information, all of the support they need to pass it the first time? Because if they pass it the first time, they're going to feel a lot better than having to come to Twilight.
So I'll back up and talk about your first part, because all of our schools do have specials and they do have connections teachers. That's art, music, PE. Do they have all that they need? I am not going to stand here and tell you yes, because our K-8s especially struggle with their schedules and being able to provide those based on, some of that is the formula that we use for staffing them, so that they could use additional teachers in that area to support those other areas of engagement. There should not be a school stripping a student of specials in lieu of additional time. We accounted for that when we built our master schedule. If you will remember, part of the work of the Literacy Task Force was to increase the literacy block to 120 minutes. It was also to ensure that that was part of what we did in scheduling, but it did not strip them of the ability to have to actually have specials built into their schedule as well. So that was some work that was done with the team, curriculum and instruction, the master schedule team, the associates, and then just those principals who were really good at developing that master schedule to maximize that time. But could they use additional support in that? Yes. Do we have some things in the works to try to bring in additional supports for them in that area? Because they do need more people to provide those opportunities for students that may have a specialty in photography. It doesn't necessarily have to be, drawing or art as we think about it in school. It may be photography in our elementary schools. It depends on what we can bring in and do to support those schools. But there is not a school, and if there is, then I need to be made aware, we all do, that is stripping specials in order for them to actually engage in, I'm going to take your PE class from you and give you additional reading class. Now, at the middle school, there are classes that are provided to help support kids, but they actually experience, most middle schools, at a minimum, I think it's about 8 opportunities for specials and connections a year. I haven't done a middle school schedule in a while, but I think 8 is about the minimum.
So, okay, and I totally believe you. What I'm concerned about is, I'm going to give you an example. You have a 3rd grade boy, okay? He acts out. First thing happens to him, PE is taken away. That is the last. No, it does happen. I've got friends who I'm serious.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. We're just saying.
I think we have to have a little bit of PE, but not nearly as much as there was. I mean, I had it every single day.
Absolutely.
Now it's like once a week because that's what we can fit in. On the passing a class and the test, 2 totally different things that we need to figure out. And God bless, my child is the one that, with the 100 going into the test, still wants to make 100 on the test. And she hangs out with a bunch of those students that are making close to 100 in the classes. And I have sat in the room when they're like, I don't care about that test because it's only this much %.
20.
So I'm not going to try that hard to pass it because I know I'm still going to get an A or a B in the class. And those are the good students. So I was one of those students like, I don't need to do too well on this because it's not that much of my grade, and I already calculated that I can make a 50 on this and be good. We're all playing the numbers. So I think, I'm not saying that's all of it, but it is one of the problems with it's where you get that massive divide. There's lots of opportunities to graduate and get those credits, but there's also a huge opportunity to pass the class and not even really have to worry about the result on the test. Now, we as a district would have to make a massive change to say, we're going to make that test worth a massive percentage, while the state is going the opposite direction and making it a less of a percentage. I don't know why. I'm not in those rooms. But that's one of the things. It's students playing the game, and it's students going into a standardized test going, I hate standardized tests. I'm not going to try them colored, I'm going to do the Christmas tree, or every answer is going to be C, or abacadabra. All things I've done before on a standardized test because it didn't matter to me, and I didn't know that people were in a room somewhere actually looking at that data and caring about it when I was a student. I just knew, I already got an A in this, I'm good. So that's there.
It's the biggest thing, because I have been approached, I cannot tell you how many times in our community about why content mastery looks one way and graduation rate, and then there's a question of our integrity as a district. And I really want to emphasize to people that the test is objective. It is one test on one day. Yes. That is what generates that data point. A student graduating is based on credit accrual, and to get the credit, you just have to pass the class. And so passing a class is very subjective. It's how the teacher grades. It's what kind of assignments the teacher gives the student. It is whether the teacher allows for redo opportunities. Some teachers may allow for a redo. Other teachers may not allow for a redo. It's the quality of the teacher in every class. It's so many variables. And so, yes, there is always going to be a discrepancy because one data point is one moment in time, and it's very objective. It's based on a test designed by the state. And graduation rate, quite frankly, is based on a student's ability to earn an A, a B, or C in a class. And that is very subjective.
And they also know that, to Dr. Brinkman's
only
point,
20%.
it is 20% now, but the state has just given districts the leeway if we would like to reduce it to 10%. And that is something that we have to bring forward to our board. And I will tell you, as a high school principal, when I would have those meetings, when those American Lit scores, U.S. history scores would come back, I need to talk to this student, this student, this student. PBO, I calculated my grade. I already knew if I didn't pass this test, I'm still going to make an 80 in the class because I have an A, or I'm still going to make a 78. I'm still going to get the credit. I heard that more times than I wanted to, and I had the conversation about the importance of the assessment more times than I ever wanted to.
Mr. Johnson. A couple of things. One, I was unfortunately not one of those kids that can calculate how bad I could do to still pass the class. I actually had to do well on these standardized tests, so kudos to y'all who actually could, kind of blow it off. But the other thing is that one thing I've realized by having a kid that's gone through and stuff is that I'm not saying teach to the test, but teach how to take a test. That's also another thing that we used to do when I was in school. Test-taking skills, how to study, how to take a standardized test, how to take a test in class versus like, granted, I'm on the ITBS, or the SAT, or the ACT. You could, if somebody has the opportunities and the resources, a lot of times they do it on their own dime. But we don't do that here. I haven't heard of a teacher that does that, or a class that does that. Mm-hmm. We might, but I haven't heard of it. But I think it should be looked at more district-wide as a way to actually teach how to test and how to study and how to look at these things, because it's especially not being done at a lot of the younger ages, like before GMAS starts. It starts when people start really looking at it, but not at the younger ages.
So I think part of that is that our teachers do some of what you are speaking of. We also have various tools that they actually work with the students on, because they have to know how to use those tools on the test. One of the great things I know that not just occurs in our English classes, but across the board, is when you teach students how to annotate the text, and then they can actually apply that, how to annotate the text, which also is it helps them during that test-taking time, even in breaking apart the assessment questions. So I think as part of the classroom instruction, those things are embedded in it now as opposed to a separate class. But we also still do offer an ACT and an SAT class as well. We find that we don't have as many students, of course, engaging in that course because of where that is at this point in time as it relates to college acceptance. So within the regular instruction, you will see our teachers using those strategies and those tools. I'm not sure maybe if across all of our classrooms they're calling it out as prominently as maybe when you were in school or I was in school, but they're doing those, as well as we do have study skills classes that incorporate and embed some of that.
Just as a parent also, and I want to speak to parents for just a minute, one of the most discouraging conversations that I had recently, I was having lunch at a restaurant, and a parent stopped by to share that her children are children that earn A's and B's in their classes, but then on their assessments, their state assessments, their I-ready assessments, they are not performing. And the parent was asking, why is that? When my kid gets his or her report card, I'm thinking my child is doing well. I'm excited about the grade, but then when the test score comes, I'm confused because the teacher has been telling me my child is progressing. One of the most important things I think a parent, if you are a parent, you can do is find those example test booklets that are out there that the state puts out. And when your child is bringing home homework, test papers, lay those test papers down beside those questions that you can find in those test books, and you should see alignment. If you are constantly seeing your child doing work that looks to be below where they are and where they are going to be tested at the end of the year, go to the school and have a conversation. We tend to remediate kids to death, and if they don't ever get a chance for exposure to what grade level material looks like, then when the test comes, of course, they're not going to know what the grade level test looks like because we've remediated them all year instead of exposing them to the quality and the rigor of what we know the end of year test. And I not only have heard it from parents, the most disturbing piece is hearing it from kids. To say, I sat in a class all year, and when they put the GMAS test in front of me, it was like I had been in the wrong class. That is the most discouraging comments that I have heard from kids. And so parents, I just implore you, I'll email you a copy of the appropriate test booklet if you will email me, and you need to be looking at the student work your kid is bringing home and the work that is expected of them so that you can ensure they're getting grade level work.
So the most important person I want to hear from right now is our Teacher of the Year, Miss Dillon.
And Dr. Watts, I love that you're telling the parents that. Y'all, and BBO, you know this. We test and test and test. And you're talking about preparing them for tests. They take iReady. They take common assessments at the end of every unit. I mean, they're just tested out. And then you've got your ELL students who are also taking those tests. And I know we're working on that with the teacher burnout report. And Sherry, I see you out there. But just keep that in mind as we're talking about these tests, that let's work together to come up with a solution of over-testing them. But we've also got to prepare them. And I don't know the perfect answer, but just keep that in mind as this discussion. I know you of all people know it. So thank you.
So I'm going to make one comment and then Mr. Kachmar. One of the things you mentioned was the ACT and SAT, and one of the comments you made is, well, kind of alluding that a lot of colleges aren't retired. Well, guess what?
They're returning.
Colleges are beginning to require them again.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, we've seen that.
So let's make sure our high school kids, wealthy kids have coaches that help them on how to do the SAT and ACT. We've got to prepare. And for those who are saying, oh, Roger, no, everyone doesn't want to go to college. However, those kids that do want to go to college, I want them to have the leg up. So I don't know how we do this, but we have got to get our kids prepared for the ACT and SAT. It's back.
And we do have a course for that, actually.
Mr. Cashmore.
We do have a course that we offer for the SAT and the ACT, as well as online supports. We do actually have a class that students can take, and the class has not seen, of course, a lot of engagement by virtue of where we'd moved as it relates to SAT and ACT, but we've noted that it's on the rise again.
Is it in every school?
Is it free?
Every school, it is free, and every school has the ability to offer it.
So communications, get that.
That's right.
Get that
the thing.
word out
We
to our
also
parents.
have online
Intentional
resources.
Use of that resource. It has to be intentional, and I would say you can't make it mandatory, but it has to really be intentional, and not just something. If
they're
I feel
taking,
like
yeah.
it, because that is going to make a big difference. But I'm happy to hear that we have that, because I wasn't aware. At every high school, you're saying.
Every high school has the ability to offer that course.
Three
sorry.
real quick comments. One, on the testing. I've been complaining about testing since I got on the board. You all changed
Yes,
the
sir.
term to assessments.
You caught it.
And you fooled me for a couple years.
I
Bless
was
your
not
heart.
here to.
Bless your heart. All I'm saying is, I'm glad we're looking at it afresh. Please listen to input from our Teacher of the Year, number one. Number two, the comments about remediation, those dovetail with the discussion we've had for years about rigor. We don't offer the same rigor in all of our schools. And if kids in one high school can take much higher classes, they're going to do better on standardized tests than if we're doing remedial or barely grade level. So I'm glad we're looking at that as well. Third, the integrity of our graduation rate. I've heard that as well. Dr. Watts, I'm glad you addressed it. All I will say is if you look at the data, look at the state content mastery scores, they're in the 60s, they're in the low 60s, they're at a mid-80s graduation rate. Our comp group, they're in the 40s, they're at a mid-80s graduation rate. We're in the low 50s, and we're at an 89% graduation rate. So it's not unique to us. And to say we're artificially promoting or graduating these kids, I think is largely false. Can we do better? Absolutely. But this is happening across the state. It's not just our district.
Thank you. And we have expanded our advanced placements based on a lot of feedback, much of it from you, Mr. Ketchmar, over the years, because it is the best thing for kids, and it does provide them an opportunity to that rigorous content in preparation for college, should you elect to go immediately after high school or later. And it also provides opportunities to really help you with critical thinking and those other skills that you may use outside of that. So we have expanded those offerings across our high schools, because some of them did not offer one course, and now we are at them offering at least 2 to 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Howard Hall, and then Mr. Johnson.
I had my hand up for a while, so my
I'm so
question.
sorry.
My question is not related to the other questions, but to go back to attendance. Attendance is a partnership with our parents. I see wonderful strategies on here, but I don't see anything regarding parental engagement. I remember my daughter was in pre-K, went to school one week excited, the next week, I don't want to go to school anymore. But as for me in my house, that's where you're going. You're going to school. whether you're bored or whatever the case may be. So what can we do to engage the parents? Because ultimately, it's the parents' responsibility to send us their children.
So I will tell you that we are working on different parent engagement strategies. Again, as we have been discussing, all of these issues are not just Savannah-Chatham, but you are correct. Parent engagement is someplace that we struggle as well. We have some things where we're working to be able to provide opportunities for parents to come, because engagement, I think we often think you got to come after school. or you got to come to the PTA. But we need to provide opportunities for them to engage during the day or during times that are convenient to them or in other ways besides I just need to show up and sit in front of the teacher. That may not be how you define engagement, but your child knows that you're connected to the school community in some kind of way, and there's that two-way system of communication going on. So we are exploring something, not quite ready to share yet, but it's under development, and we'll be bringing that forward as well. And I do want to speak on attendance and talk about the collaboration that our communications team has with local media and working on some ways to actually spotlight and showcase attendance. And so that collaboration is going on as well to lift it up in the face of the entire community and kind of put it out there for everyone to see, but also acknowledging those kids that are making improvements and that are on point with attendance and holding that up as a beacon of light for others.
Mr. Johnson?
Going back to tests / assessments / whatever you want to call them, the ASVAB. I know a lot of people typically don't take the ASVAB. I know there's a lot of people that have never even heard of the ASVAB. Are we doing anything outside of our JROTC programs to promote the ASVAB, study for the ASVAB? You know, like we had the SAT and the ACT prep stuff. Do we have like an ASVAB prep or anything like that?
So that typically does occur through our JROTCs. We have not done any type of concerted counselor or, kind of marketing in our high schools for our students to take the ASVAB. It now has become a part of CCRPI. We've always made it available. We've talked about those dates, the administration, but we don't have actual concerted efforts to promote the ASVAB or taking of the ASVAB in our schools.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you so much for your presentation thus far. I have a quick question for you. When we look at improvement strategies, we've zeroed in on different classes, if you will, throughout this discussion. We talked about middle schools. We've talked about Dr. David Brinkman brought up the special needs, disabilities. I would like to know, because this has been coming up in my community and in communities in the district, what are we doing for our SPED students directly to help them improve academically?
So one of the things that we have done is because, we've all had the discussion about the classroom instruction and teachers. And so we've spent a lot of work on making sure that our teachers follow the compliance guidelines and those things that, we want to make sure that we're doing in terms of their IEPs. But there's an instructional component, too, that is occurring in that classroom. And so based on some data that we collected and recognizing that's where the gap is, thank you to the board. Last year, as part of the literacy plan, we did hire 3 program managers that strictly focus on instruction. And you would have thought we gave the principals Christmas, because they are in high demand constantly. They work directly with teachers. They work in the classroom. They work actually preparing teachers, supporting teachers, making sure that the instruction aligns to the actual goals that that child needs to meet that are written in the IEP. And here are the best practices that if Bernadette does have some challenges in terms of how she processes information, then let's zero in what are the strategies that I can use in my classroom as a teacher or that you can use in your classroom as a teacher that will support me. So we have these people now, boots on the ground. We have one that is elementary, one that is 6-8, and one that is 9-12. And they are in schools working across those grade spans, supporting teachers and in classrooms doing that work.
Is there anything that we can do to increase their productivity that has been identified as of yet?
We'll be bringing that recommendation forward as well.
Thank you tremendously.
Ms. Hall?
I have a question for our Teacher of the Year. When I was a middle school principal, I had a company come in, and what they did was recalibrate. I would give the company examples of our teachers in-class tests, a social studies test or whatever, and they would know what the standard was, and they would come back and either rate that teacher as having given a test worthy of the level of that grade, say it's 6th grade, or not worthy of it. It was too easy. It was not. Some of my teachers were thrilled to get that help. Some were deeply insulted. What do you think if we did that kind of thing to test the rigor of our teachers' tests? What kind of reception would that bring? Because that's what it's going to take. This is your test. Your test is for a 4th grader, and these are 6th graders. So,
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I believe in courageous conversations, and I think if a teacher's not doing what they're supposed to be, that they do need to be talked to. But at the same time, you've got to assist them. If you're going to tell them they're doing a poor job, somebody needs to be there to pick up the pieces and to help them. But no, well, please. And if you're not willing, you might need to find another seat on the bus, you know?
well,
We've got to meet the needs of our kids.
It wasn't like 1 or 2 teachers. I mean, I would say
think
it was
it's
half
great.
of the faculty needed that up. But now, it's a formal, a company, I think, would be better than someone in the, I don't think the principal, that's not the principal's thing. It would need to be probably somebody we'd have to pay for to do that. But I think we'd get a lot of rewards from it if we actually did that. Because many of the teachers probably don't know. They think they're making it,
Why are we,
you know.
why are they making their own tests? Why don't we have school-based or
Oh, no, no.
team-based tests that?
Common assessments.
Well, they have those once or twice a year, but I'm talking about your, this is a unit of study, and here's the test that I'm giving for that unit of study. And you see?
We should have minimum
Because that's where those grades come from, where you get an A and a B, when actually, when you get to the real test at the end.
They don't know.
They
And you
don't
can
know
also
anything.
look at text, like the text, not just the test, but the text that kids have in front of them. There's an app, actually, that I've used before where you can scan the text and it'll tell you the grade level. And you would be surprised that, you know, the teacher loves teaching A Wrinkle in Time, but these kids are like in the 11th grade. But because the teacher loves that novel, they're going to teach it every single year, right?
And
So it's that kind of thing.
And I will say that goes to monitoring too, because the resources in the units that we have designed are aligned to what the state recommends and the rigor. And so part of that does come, yes, the formative assessments, definitely, I actually love that idea, but a part of that with the resources comes in making sure that we are monitoring that they're utilizing the resources in the units that our curriculum and instruction, our teacher specialists and learning specialists have put out there, because those resources align to the rigor of the curriculum and have been identified in alignment with what the state recommends.
Thank you. I have a request and then a motion. My request is that we take this conversation, that we pack it up and fold it up and take it to academic excellence. Because this is the kind of conversation that we have in those committee meetings. And so I would ask Dr. Howard Hall if she would consider bringing this idea of assessing rigor and courageous conversations about teaching at the right level and getting people to the right level without getting them behind on their content, if we could maybe have that conversation in academic excellence. And my motion is to move the agenda so that our team can finish their presentation.
Yeah.
And
It is prayer meeting day, and amen. Okay. All right. Continue, so we can get to our next, we got 2 more people, I think, okay?
So I think we've kind of discussed a lot of what you see on this slide. Just want to lift up for you that we do have specific professional learning that is going on to support our teachers' instruction of our English learners. And so that is going on in conjunction not only with our team, but also with the state, who is providing support and training for our teachers as well in the specific content areas for those teachers. And then, of course, you know, we are in the throes of letters training, and you'll hear more about that. I have stood here, and I am so glad that you have bombarded me with questions that I appreciated, because now it's going to make it easy. I'd like to introduce our new Literacy Effectiveness Officer who is joining us, Ms. Sherry Goldman, and she is going to actually give you a literacy update, but she knows you've asked all your questions and comments were given to me.
It is so wonderful to be here. I'm really excited to be doing this most important work, and it's going to be contributing to it's very foundational to these conversations that we're having about progress and growth and rigor and addressing all of our students across grades K-12. So I'm very excited to be here to be doing this work. So some of the things that we have done or that we are in the process of doing to contribute to our effort towards literacy, in addition to filling the position of Literacy Effectiveness Officer, we have hired 3 literacy specialists, 3 of our 6 literacy specialists. There are 4 designated for elementary. There are 2 that are designated for our secondary schools. Our 3 elementary literacy specialists are already on the ground. They've been working in our schools on a daily basis. They go in and provide support and coaching to teachers either on an individual basis or on a group basis. They go into classrooms, they are coaching, they are providing feedback, and they are providing tailored professional development to our teachers in the work that they do in the targeted schools that they are working in right now. House Bill 538 requires that by July 1st of 2025, all K through 3 teachers must complete their training in the science of reading, structured literacy, and foundational literacy skills. We have begun our LETRS training. LETRS fills that requirement as the course because it is accredited by the International Dyslexia Association. There are 4 administrative cohorts. They're getting ready to meet for their second face-to-face meeting. We have 2 cohorts of coaches and specialists who have already had 2 face-to-face meetings, and we have 30 cohorts of teachers who are getting ready to start their face-to-face meetings at the end of February and into March. In addition to K through 3 teachers, we do have some 4th and 5th grade teachers who are joining this cohort, and we have the intention of having pre-K teachers also begin LETRS training as well. Very important to have that continuous emphasis on foundational literacy skills that don't just begin in kindergarten, but that do begin with our pre-K students. We have our Wilson Foundations phonics program that has been in our schools already. Our coaches and our specialists, literacy and learning specialists, continue to provide retraining and coaching and monitoring of that phonics system and providing support in our schools. We also have our upcoming textbook, are looking at our textbook that will be aligned to science of reading for grades K through 12 and the 5 pillars of literacy that would meet the criteria of House Bill 538 of us having a core curriculum that aligns with the science of reading and structured literacy and to meet the needs of our diverse learners. As Ms. Ball-Oliver already mentioned, we have hired 3 specialized instruction program managers for special education who are providing intensive support in our schools to teachers and also providing support to administrators in how they can support those teachers in the school to know what they're looking for and to provide sustained support to those teachers. And lastly, we've hired 2 bilingual liaisons who will be starting next week to provide support to our ESOL families and community. They will be supporting schools, so they are not assigned to classrooms like ESOL teachers or ESOL paraprofessionals, but they will be providing support to our schools and our communities as a whole. So thank you very much, and I'm excited to be here to do this work.
Any questions?
Any questions?
All right. All right. Okay. Come on. All right, I need... Well... Okay. So used to this. Okay, our next presenter would be on the Reading English Language Arts textbook adoption. Paul Roslin, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I'm sorry.
Goal 1, student success, academic achievement, and life readiness, and Goal 4, fiscal responsibility and resource stewardship. This RFP 23-41, K-12 reading, English language arts, textbook adoption, annual contract supports both of those goals. The purchasing department received 12 proposals in response to RFP 23-41, K-12 reading, English language arts, textbook adoption annual contract. Proposals were submitted by the 12 schools. In your packet, the 12 vendors are listed, and they can be found on the website. The intent of the request for proposal was to identify one or more offerers who could fully meet the requirements of providing a comprehensive Tier 1 reading, English language arts curriculum resource to be implemented at the elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the district. The district evaluates curriculum on a revolving basis, with reviews taking place at least once every 7 years or sooner when dictated by changes in standards or program requirements. Additional information and details on the process that was taken for this RFP is also included in your packet and can be found on the website. Thus, being resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the board approves the award of RFP 23-41, K-12 reading, English language arts, textbook adoption annual contract to the firm of Houghton Milton Harcourt Publishing Company for the comprehensive purchase of info reading for K-5, info literature for 6 through 12, Waggle for K-8, and Writable for 3 through 12 at a total estimated cost over a 6-year period in the amount of $20,387,665 pending final cost negotiations. Be it further resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the board approve the use of general fund balance in the amount of $6,850,730 for year 1 costs and assign $13,536,935 of fund balance for years 2 through 6 at estimated costs of $2,707,387 annually.
Ms. Grabowski?
Move to approve.
Second by Ms. Hall. Any discussion? Ms. Grabowski and then Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
I just want to commend Ms. Burkett and the entire team for the extraordinary work that y'all did to make these materials available to the community. They held multiple sessions where you could come in and see every single piece of literature that was being, or sections, or highlights of each of the grade levels. And they were very, I mean, I was there just kind of as an observer as well, and saw how they, were interacting with people. And it's my understanding they even held additional sessions above and beyond what had initially been outlined. So I know that was an awful lot of work and time that went into that. And I'm also excited about the materials that we are adopting, the interactive nature of a lot of the materials. And I think this is a great next step for us as a district, so certainly support this. I do have one question as far as the purchase, because I know some of the materials do have workbooks that are used by the students. So is the purchase of those workbooks, is that going to be a annual purchase we have to take on every year, or how does that work?
Good question. So, yes, it will be, and that's part of the 6-year outline that those consumables, and that would be K through 12. So that is already included in the cost estimate that you see.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. I'm in support of this motion, and my question may not sound like I am, but I promise you, I am in support of this motion, and I look forward to the good that these resources are going to do. I'm just trying to connect my understanding of how we take actions across different areas. So we have fund balance on the financial side, which is way harder. You might not be gone, though. We have fund balance, which we know is much higher than the state wants us to have it. And we've been looking at that and talking about it in our conversations and say, what is it that we would do with this that is not a recurring expense, but is impactful on what we need to do as a district? So we have our financials, which if you look at books and textbooks across the different line items in the different funds, it's like 8,000 here, 34,000 there. There's not many lines that even go up to 100,000. So when we've asked about that in previous years, the statement has been, well, we're not really using books like that. We use technology, and then we point to how we have used eSPLOS funds to pay for these resources. So my question is, I guess, I don't know who the right person to ask, but my question is, how did we go from saying that we are not really spending in this area and we're not going to put a recurring expense in general fund to getting a recommendation that is a high-level recurring expense for general fund? And if you're going to spend general fund, this is a very eligible thing to do, which is why I'm in favor of it. But I also see a school sitting in general fund. Not general fund. I'm seeing there's enough money in fund balance to address some really big district-wide problems.
So I don't know. I don't know, Kurt, if your recollection serves you, but I thought this was coming out of fund balance. And just so you know.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, it is coming out of fund balance. And at the next Financial Advisory Committee meeting, you will get our plan for fund balance. Today is just one piece of it. I understand that your question is deeper in how have we made decisions in the past about what we decide to spend on fund balance. I don't know the answer to that because I don't have that historical information, but I know moving forward, we will have a plan to you that will assign fund balance to certain things so that we know what that is moving forward.
Okay.
It's not this willy-nilly thing around 1 year we do it out of fund balance, 1 year we do it out of general fund.
Well, no, I do appreciate that. This is saying that for the next few years, this is how we're spending fund balance.
Assign fund balance.
But again, I see a school in fund balance. So I'm like, how? And we need a school. So I'd like to know.
When you see the fund balance plan in a week and a half, you're going to see how we have incorporated maintenance, phase 1 of the facility plan. You're going to see the whole fund balance plan, and you will see schools represented.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown, to your other part of that question, because I do believe that when we had this conversation, and I'm going to really date myself, the last time that we had a massive textbook adoption with ELA, I was actually probably in the 90s, and I was working at the district office. The state kind of moved away. They used to have a list, they used to have recommendations, and they used to kind of guide that process when we adopted it. And they kind of moved away from guiding that process and allowing more flexibility among districts. And so some districts chose to do full-blown adoption. Some tended to now go to more online resources. And then they became writing your own kind of support structure. So it was a hodgepodge of things that occurred. But with this new House bill and actually requiring those resources and returning to that, we're now looking at more of a standardized process for going back to textbook adoption. So it has been many years, but this is probably not the first of many that you will see coming forward that actually brings forward a textbook that will provide those curriculum resources for our teachers.
Thanks, I appreciate it. So this is an elevation of what we've been doing. And again, I'm in full support of it. And I also trust the administration to tell me the rest of the plan. It does make me itch to vote on a part of the plan and not know the whole grocery list of what is going to be there. But I am trusting, optimistic.
There you go. Okay, Ms. Hall, then Ms. Kachmer.
Ms. Burkett, in terms of us going back to our neighborhood groups and giving them a brief indication of what the new textbook adoption encapsulates. Can you kind of give us your overview of why you feel this is going to be very helpful for us?
Sure, and it's based off of a lot of data from a lot of different sources, so I appreciate the question. It has generally everything, from books for the classroom to consumables for the students to digital resources, even down to secondary schools. We're going to get to select the novels. It's not just a prescriptive list of novels for this grade level and this grade level. We'll be able to actually look at our student population and pick which novels go in our middle schools, which go in our high schools. It gives all of the teacher resources in terms of not just your Tier 1 instruction for grade level standards, but also for supports for our EL students, our students with disabilities, and for differentiation. It's also very much aligned to science of reading, as well as vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency, really focusing on the upper grades. For 3rd through 12, there's a very robust writing program. That is the writable component that you see. AI is the way of the future, so AI is very much a part of that component. However, it's also going to support teachers in giving quick, immediate feedback to their students, as well as supports for our EL students on vocabulary and how to improve their own writing. So I don't think that we're missing any component. It's going to require professional learning and training for our teachers, but the feedback we got, especially from our pilot teachers, was that they felt like this was the most comprehensive.
Fantastic.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kachmar.
So I too echo the thank you for all the effort put into transparency. I want to address the conversation about fund balance for a minute, not because I'm against looking at our fund balance, but to make a few points. Number one, our fund balance has gotten to where it is because of excess tax collections that were unexpected. We had lots of people visit Chatham County, but those tax collections have leveled off a bit. The state of Georgia, their collections are leveling off. Chatham counties are leveling off. So the rate of collection and addition into fund balance and our general fund is not going to be at the same rate, at least this year, and maybe moving forward. Second, the last time we substantively talked about fund balance was when our accountants came and said, you know, here's your financial report, things look good. The state recommendation is 2 months of fund balance, and we're above that, but we, you know, the benchmark in here is 2 months. The discussion we had as the board at that time was, we think we may want more than 2 months of fund balance because it's 2 months of operation, but hurricane gives us a glancing blow. We're spending $30 million alone on cleanup, and that's before we get into startup and operations and all that. So whatever our plan is for fund balance, I don't want us to look at it as, oh, we have this excess pot of money, let's figure out how to spend it. We should, as a board, decide, I know what the state minimum is, but most, you know, the state minimum and laws generally are a floor. It's the minimum recommendation. We don't do the minimum recommendation for our students. We do more because we think it's better or more prudent. I personally think we should have more than 2 months of fund balance. So I just want that to be part of the consideration as a board. And then finally, part of the discussion too was instead of spending all the money in fund balance, we can also take a look at our millage rate. And if our millage rate, and we had this discussion at the last budget meeting, when the report was, we don't know what our final numbers are going to be, what our final collections are going to be, and we were arguing about what the millage reduction should be. Some of us wanted a higher reduction than others, and it turned out we could have gone a little more and still met our budget goals. And I'm not saying now I'm insisting on a millage reduction. All I'm saying is if we're collecting more money than we need for our existing budget, we need to, one, determine what do we want next year's budget to be? Is it the same budget level as this year? Do we want to spend more money because we have all these other initiatives? Or the millage rate should be part of that discussion, is all I'm saying. But we have excess funds and fund balance. We need to take into account, again, is 2 months enough, and is the millage rate where we want it to be, and what should next year's budget look like?
Okay, I'm going to go down here, Dr. Howard Hall, then Ms. Grabowski.
Yes, we know that we have a lot of Title I schools. We have several, and they can't use their funding to purchase textbooks because that's supplanting. However, they can use their funds to supplement the textbooks. So do you have a list of resources or books or other materials that those Title I schools could use to supplement the textbook adoption?
So I would say currently that's under investigation because part of House Bill 538 requires that any supplemental materials are also reviewed with the supplemental materials rubric. So there will be a little bit of a different process for that. However, they will have a lot of their needs met. They may choose to purchase additional decodable books from a different type of resource that would support small group instruction or to support parent engagement and things like that. So we will work towards that, but we do currently have to review what we have at the moment for supplemental and make sure that it meets the criteria for House Bill 538 before we can get to that list.
Ms. Grabowski.
I just want to quickly, I meant to mention this as well. One of the other things that I was very impressed with this process was the way that it was piloted at some of our schools, and it was a diverse mix of schools. So I just want to give Ms. Burkett just a moment to share the schools that piloted the curriculum for us and gave their feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'm going to pull out my list because while I have most of the elementary ones memorized, the secondary ones I have to refer to my paper for. But yes, we were very intentional to make sure that each of the solutions that we were considering out of the 4 we piloted at elementary in 2 schools, K through 5. So we had, for example, the one that is for approval today was piloted at White Bluff and at Godley Station. So we were able to look at a variety of demographics as well as teaching populations. At McGraw-Hill was piloted at Garrison and at Butler. Savis was piloted at Marsh Point, Schumann, and Bloomingdale. And then we had Scholastic at Garden City and New Hampstead K-8. For high school, I'll just list off the schools. We used Godley Station, Myers Middle, STEM Academy, Building Bridges, Garrison, New Hampstead 6 through 8, and Southwest at the middle grades level. And then at high school, we used Savannah High, Windsor Forest High, Jenkins, Groves, New Hampstead, Johnson, and Savannah Arts Academy. So we tried to make sure we looked across all areas of the district to get as much input as we possibly could from the teacher. And that was probably one of the most invaluable components of this whole process, was to hear their feedback after using the materials in the classroom with their students. So that was an awesome step. We were happy to get that feedback.
Okay, you deserve applause.
There was a lot of us that went into it, but thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, we got to vote, don't we? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay. There being no further discussion, it has been moved and seconded. All in favor? All right. That is 8, and we have one that's not here. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. McDaniel, continue.
Okay. The next up, we have our board financials for this month, and we're looking at year-to-date through December. At this point, we are halfway through the school year fiscally, and 40% of the school year academically. In our fund balance, Fund 100, we have collected about 62% of our budgeted property taxes compared to 59% last year. Overall, our revenues, we have collected almost 59% of budget, which is also higher than what we had last year. This time, we collected about 55% of our revenue through December. For our expenses, one of the lines we looked at this month, we typically look at it in December because it's a high energy month, is our energy expenditures. For the month of December, year-to-date, we were at about 41% of our budget. And that was lower than it was the year before. Our teacher salary expenditures remain the same, about 36% of what was budgeted has been spent. Paras salaries, we're at about 32% of budget. Our overall total expenditures for the year so far, we're at almost 37% compared to 39% last year. One of the funds we had to kind of highlight this month was our CTA fund, Fund 406. Fund 406 is a special revenue fund that's used to account for financial resources for grants funding technical and career education initiatives. These grant funds include both federal Carl Perkins grant funds and several state technical education program grants. Year to date, we've spent $62,531 of a total budget of $518,000. Those are our highlights on our financials for this month. If you have any questions, I'll entertain them now.
Okay. Ms. Hall.
I'm very pleased to hear that our energy costs are down. Could you go over that one more time? The difference between now and last year?
Yes, ma'am. Our energy costs for this year, we were at 41% of budget. To give you the numbers on those energy, we've spent $4,387,000. And we've got a budget remaining of $6.1 million. So we are about, compared to last year, we're about 2% less than we had been last year.
Okay, thank you. That's commendable.
Continue.
Okay. No other questions?
I think that's intentional. I think those costs are down because of efforts we made and maintenance and operations made to help us with Georgia Power get to that point. So I think that's an intentional action, and we're reaping a good result.
Yes, ma'am. I do know that our maintenance and operations team have been working with Georgia Power, making some conversions from the regular lights to the LED program. That work is continuously going on, and I think I would agree with you on that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the financials?
I move to accept the financial statements as presented.
But thank you for your motions. I was just making sure you're paying attention. Next. Continue, Ms. McMahon.
Okay.
East
Next,
Blast?
pardon?
East Blast?
Yes. Next on our agenda is Goal 4, Fiscal Responsibility and Resource Stewardship. This is a budget amendment for East Splash 3 revenue. On November 8th, 2018, the voters approved an extension of the Educational Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. On February 1st, 2017, the board approved a new capital project, Fund 312, to record East Splash tax revenues and expenditures. The Division of Finance requests the board to approve the proposed adjustments to East Splash 3 revenues and expenditures. This action is to adjust the budget to reflect recognized revenue as of December 31st, 2023. The addition will allow monies to be applied to the unallocated account line to support ongoing projects. There is a schedule listing the proposed moves in your packets. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the amendment of E-Splash 3 Fund 312 multi-year budgeted revenues and expenditures by $2,091,019 as summarized in the table provided.
Moved by Dr. Brinkman, seconded by Dr. Hoskins Brown. Okay, one of you, anyway, one of them. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? That is 8 and 1 absent, yes. Thank you. Moving on.
Facilities, upgrades, modifications, and equipment, Fund 308, interfund transfer. The Audio Enhancement Systems Integration Project includes upgrades to the intercom, safety communications, and classroom audiovisual systems district-wide. Details are provided in your packet, along with a schedule of the anticipated moves. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board now approves the transfer of monies as detailed in the agenda item to Fund 308 project account lines for audio enhancements in the amount of $3,065,000.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say how pleased I am to know that this is moving forward. If you recall, I brought some of that audio enhancement for you to see a couple of years ago. So it's nice to see that we're getting it out and across the district. Thank you.
Now, does that mean Ms. Hall gets one of those balls? Okay, all right. All right, all in favor? Thank you.
Fund 308, Largo Tibet Upgrade Renovations Budget Transfer. Staff requests the following budget transfer within the Fund 308 Facility Repairs budget. Capital projects seek to transfer funds from the 308 unallocated account to the Largo Tibet Upgrade Renovation account. The transfers of funds will be used for construction services, architectural fees, and portables. The schedule is provided for that. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approves the budget transfer of $2 million as
So
noted.
move.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Dr. Brinkman. Any discussion? Yes, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. Just that I'm very happy for the improvement in the climate that the young people and the staff are going to experience there with this decision.
This is great. All right. All in favor? Thank you. 0. Thank you very much. Next.
The last one is this is owned by the Division of Operations, Transportation Department. It's a budget transfer. The Transportation Department of Operations is requesting a budget transfer to make a 6-month correction on the driver overtime account line. Due to the shortage of 60-plus drivers, the account went over the current allocated balance in that line item. This transfer corrects the overtime salary benefits line to reflect overtime usage. Transportation is continuing efforts to ensure account balance and in line and are reviewed monthly and modified for the remainder of the 2024 budget into 2025 budget year. Thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approves the budget transfer above in the amount of $1,366,927 to clear up the transportation negative overtime account lines.
So moved. Well, it's moved by Mr. Katchmeyer, seconded by Dr. Brinkman. Discussion. Mr. Catchmark.
I'm supporting this. The only comment I want to make is this. When you divide the number of vacancies by the amount of overtime we're spending, it comes to $22,427 per vacant position. I'll reiterate, we could raise driver pay, maybe hire more people, and maybe not eat into overtime as much.
Okay. Anyone else?
I concur with Attorney Sean Cashmore.
Ooh, attorney.
That's my other job. This is just school board member. School board member.
Board member.
Anyone else? All right, calling question. All in favor? Great, wonderful. One more.
Okay, budget amendment, General Fund 600, Supply Chain Assistance, SCA grant. And this is owned by the Division of Operations in School Nutrition. The Georgia Department of Education has awarded the SCCPSS School Nutrition Department funds for the Supply Chain Assistant Grant totaling $907,399. These funds will be used to purchase both current and future domestic foods that are not processed or only minimally processed. The funds will specifically be used for the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program. Thus, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the board approves the amendment of Fund 600 budgeted revenues and expenditures by $907,399.
Approved by Dr. Brinkman, seconded by Dr. Huskins Brown. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have 5 people to speak today. We don't need to do it today, good. Our first speaker is Mrs. Elvira de la Cruz, Valencia. And she will need a translator. Who's our translator? Is our translator here? Oh, that's the translator. I am so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, is Ms. Valencia here?
¿Está la señora Valencia?
Okay, okay, all right.
Okay.
All right. Next, Mr. Peter Robine. And he does not need a translator.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Pete Robine. I'm founder of the organization Teach Our Christian Heritage. And I first want to extend a belated congratulations to Dr. Watts for becoming our new superintendent of schools. I've been away for most of the last year working, so I've been able to attend. I'm also just want to say quickly, I'm very impressed with the discussion with the board and these nice people right here earlier about, I can really see that you guys have got your heart in the right place and you really have the best intentions for our students' academic achievements. So it's really wonderful to see. It's been worth sitting and listening for quite a while.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm here because I want to request an appointment to meet with every single member of the board, individually or in groups of any configuration. And I'd like to meet also with Dr. Hancock and Andrew Burkett. We need to discuss the curriculum. Our schools need to adopt a freedom-oriented curriculum. While our military defends our freedom on battlefields abroad, we need to be able to defend our freedom right here at home on the intellectual battlefield of ideas. which, sad to say, most Americans are ill-prepared to do. Because most Americans are woefully undereducated when it comes to understanding their rights. For example, 5 of our 6 most precious rights are enumerated in our First Amendment. What are they? Can anybody here name those 5 rights? Raise your hand if you can. So this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. So I would like to meet with you to discuss how we can improve our curriculum when it comes to our students understanding their rights. This is fundamentally important. Since 2011, I performed a presentation called The Drums of Freedom, where I play a little drum solo to make the presentation entertaining, but I talk about 4 things: the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our wonderful free market capitalist economic system, which is a gift. That means in America, no matter where you're born on the economic ladder, you can go up that ladder. And most importantly, I talk about the presence of God in the establishment and history of this country. For example, God is referenced 4 times in our Declaration of Independence. I've memorized the entire document, which I did when I was doing film work in New York City in 2010. 3 words at a time. I carried around a little pocket transcript in my back pocket. So my son and I were the production assistants, working 12, 15, 18-hour days. And whenever he was driving, I'd pull up my little pocket transcript. I'd memorized 3 words. So since 2011, I've recited the entire Declaration of Independence out loud from memory over 2,400 times. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
My little
Rabbi.
joke is that I can remember that, but I can't remember what I did this morning.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
I'm going to send everybody an email. And with due
Thank you.
respect, Roger, I've called you so many times over the last year. You never return a phone call. And Dr. Watts, I sent you an email the other day.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Your time's up, sir.
I've waited 2.5 hours to speak. So I just want to make that a request. And Mr. Smith, I met your dad at a funeral a couple years ago from my father, a friend of mine,
Sir,
Keith Patchett.
your time's up.
So anyway, please,
Thank you.
I will give you a call. I will talk to everybody individually. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Okay. Mrs. Martinez. And she will need a translator. Oh, I'm still over there. Still here. All right. Oh, yes.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Lady Martínez y soy la madre de una estudiante del Gol Alimentario. Yo sé que recientemente ha habido muchos cambios con respecto al plan de instalaciones de largo plazo que afectará a muchas escuelas diferentes de nuestro condado.
Sí, necesito un poquito de tiempo para traducir. Okay. Good afternoon. She introduced herself. She's a parent for a child at Gould Elementary School.
Okay. Me alegra saber que el distrito no cerrará por completo la escuela primaria Gould porque ha sido una excelente escuela para mi hija.
She came here to talk about the changes happening to Gould. She's pleased to know that Gould will no longer be closed and that there will not be redistricting.
Pero me dicen que es posible que mi hija todavía se vea obligada a abandonar Gould debido a que el consejo escolar aprobó este plan en la junta de enero.
However, she's also concerned that even though Gould is not closing, her daughter will also be moved to based on the approval that we did in January.
No he recibido ningún correo electrónico con información sobre este nuevo plan o cómo afectará a mi hija.
I have not received any information regarding the plan and how it will affect my child.
También cuando miro el sitio web del distrito no veo información al respecto en español.
Also, when I go to the webpage, I do not see any information in Spanish.
Me gustaría que el distrito tome en cuenta las voces y comentarios de los padres que no hablamos inglés.
I would like for the district to take in consideration the voices of the parents that do not speak English.
Los nuevos cambios se aprobaron hace un mes. Me gustaría preguntarles cuándo planean compartir información sobre este nuevo plan con los padres que no hablamos inglés.
The approval was done a month ago, and I would like to know when are you guys going to disperse the information to the parents that do not speak English?
¿Cuánto tiempo más debemos esperar para tener acceso a la misma información que obtienen los padres que sí hablan inglés?
How long will we have to wait to receive the same information that the parents that speak English received?
Nosotros como padres que no hablamos inglés tenemos que asistir a estas reuniones porque son importantes, donde se toman decisiones que impactan a nuestros hijos.
The parents that do not speak English, we had to attend these types of meetings because here's where you guys make decisions that are important to our children.
Pero nosotros no estamos incluidos en esa conversación al 100% debido a que tenemos que manejar un traductor.
We also, ¿me puedes repetir eso? Perdón.
Pues nosotros no estamos incluidos en esa conversación al 100% porque tenemos un traductor al cuando damos nuestro testimonio, pero no durante el resto de la junta.
We are not informed 100% because we only given a translator only when we had to speak, but not throughout the whole meeting.
Yo creo en un mejor futuro para todos los estudiantes del condado, y para tener un mejor futuro todos tenemos que trabajar juntos para tener más igualdad de oportunidades sin importar que no sabemos el inglés en reuniones y documentos.
That was a lot. Okay. ¿Me permite la hoja? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to read it. ¿Cuál es? Oh, I believe in a better future for all of our students in the county, and that for them to have a better future, we had to work together to provide equal opportunities without regards to whether they speak English or not in meetings and documents. We want to see actions and not just words. Thank you for your time.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Mr. Rick Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Moss, board members, Dr. Watts. This has been a very interesting day, starting in the morning and running through the conversation this afternoon. I'd like to take the discussion sort of up one level. Whenever you do your literacy GMAS reports or your CCPRI, RPI, I'm getting there. You compare the district with Georgia and with these comp counties. Georgia is very mediocre. The comp counties are very mediocre. I think that sends a dreadful message to our community and the organization, the district. We should be striving for excellence. Dr. Watts has said the North Star is literacy for all. That's 100%. So we have to measure ourselves a little differently. Just anecdotally, I experienced the quality revolution in manufacturing back in the 80s and the 90s. I'm an old guy. In those days, everybody thought poor quality was a problem, but it was just life as it was. You were going to have rejects, you were going to have field failures, it was just a cost you had to incur. A man named Philip Crosby published a book called Quality is Free. It was like a light bulb. It changed the world of manufacturing. People had a goal up here. And suddenly, I mean, we didn't get to zero defects, we didn't get to free quality, but we worked differently, and the mindset, the most important thing, the mindset changed radically. So Joseph Schwartzbert had an article in the Morning News a little while ago where he reported on the counties in Georgia and how they performed on the CCRPI. There were 6 districts that dominated the results on content mastery, and preparedness, which I think were the most important measures, in all three categories, elementary, middle, and high school. Those districts were Oconee County, Jefferson City, Bremen City, Beaufort City, City Schools of Decatur, and Chickamauga City. So I'm a new guy in Georgia. I have no idea where these places are. I have no idea how big they are. I don't know who lives there, but they're the best. And we should be measuring ourselves against the best. That inspires people, going for the highest. There's motivation. Going for mediocrity does not motivate people. We're not going to get there tomorrow, but we could be the best in 5 years if we decide to be the best. Not beat Georgia, not beat comp counties, be the best. If we set that goal, we can do it. If we don't set the goal, we'll never do it. So that's my input for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Running. All right, and finally, Shanita Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Shanique Brown with Comcast.
Shanique, I'm so sorry.
No worries. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time. I'd like to just read a quick note here on behalf of Comcast. Good evening, members of the board. It has been our pleasure supporting the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System's technology needs for the last several years. While Comcast acknowledges and understands the procurement office's decision on RFP number 24-36 E-rate eligible wide area network connectivity in the support of Savannah-Chatham County Public School System, we wish to raise a request in connection with the proposal that was submitted on behalf of Comcast Business. Comcast was determined to be non-responsive as a result of omitting the functional checklist. This omission was due to an interpretation miscommunication. As such, in the event this RFP requires reevaluation after the execution of award, we respectfully request an opportunity to be considered in that process. Also, in an effort to improve the proposal process and ensure future proposals are optimized, excuse me, Comcast requests that we be provided with a debriefing on the procurement office's decision on the RFP number 24-36 E-rate eligible wide area network connectivity opportunity. We greatly appreciate our partnership with the school system and hope that you will take our position under consideration. We also ask that this request not impact our consideration on future opportunities with your procurement office. Lastly, we would like to ask that I may provide this statement to the board secretary to be recorded as a part of the minutes of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give that to Officer Hollis. Thank you. Mr. Kashmar?
Yeah, we normally don't comment, but we have a process for asking questions related to procurement that's normally spelled out in our RFQs or whatever our guidelines are. So if you haven't already, please go to that department to ask those questions.
Yes, so we have submitted a request, and I don't believe we got a response yet.
Okay.
I've made a note.
So it's in the works.
I've made a note of it.
Okay. All right. That is all for our comments, and thank you all for coming in and commenting. Thank you all for being at our meeting today. I will, and not everyone at once. And by the way, the next meeting in March is an evening meeting. It is very important that you tell all of your friends to be here, because if we don't pack this place, I have to buy Miss Hall breakfast. So I will now I'm at the board, right? Okay, so I will accept a motion to, what's that word? Adjourn. Howard Hall? Second. It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.
You said you wanted to go to that.